let's jump right in. Here's what we've been doing the last few weeks. We've been talking about objections that come up a lot because the biggest thing I think I see with my own agents that we work with at the Icon team and just my own experience too has been so much of the conversion of online leads or people that are like PPC leads. There's some kind of like half cold, half slightly warm because you got a bit of intel on them. Anytime I'm ever speaking with leads from the internet, so much of it comes down to that like phone call and your ability to build rapport quickly, your ability to cut through the fact that you are calling somebody relatively unknown to them. And we need to like build rapport, establish relationship, and get you your foot in the door some way, shape, or form. So what I really want to chat through the most today is continuing to just talk through some of these objections because I feel like we're getting into a few each time and we're going really deep on them, which is good. And I want to just take this a couple steps further because I really do think this is the separator between the ability for most of us to be able to convert or not with these leads. So jumping right in, I'm going to isolate you, Brandon, since I know you. And I think this is a great starting place. Talk me through a little bit of number one so far. Have you had any leads that you've been dealing with Meskula or any phone calls just in the past where you tend to run into maybe an objection you can think of or, you know, something that you want to highlight in terms of how these conversations are going that we can kick things off with? How's it been going so far for you?
It's been going well. I've been pretty happy. I definitely need to kind of streamline my process. I found letting the AI like chat by like Ashley, the assistant or whatever, like kind of finish that process to be better because I find people just end up booking the calls and then I don't need to talk to them. And I'm kind of used to jumping in with those kind of systems as soon as possible. And I found that to be a little overwhelming for them. Sometimes there was one in particular. There was the first listing appointment I got from it. I was yesterday. I ended up going and meeting with the lady. It went really well. It's great. She might want to sell in the next year, maybe two. We've all heard that for could be 2 months from now. Things change fast. So I've rarely heard someone say, I don't want to sell. Like I do want to sell in the next month. It's usually, sometime in the next year and end up hearing from them in, a very short amount of time. So I was really happy with that. That one, the chatbot was kind of going a little haywire back and forth about timing. And I luckily looked at it while I was driving, pulled over and just called her and said, yeah, like 2 o'clock's fine. Don't worry about it. Kept kind of repeating back the same thing, which is fine. But for the most part, when I let it kind of get past that, for most of them, it ends up just booking a call. Having someone make the call, it's been about 50-50. I'm sure that number goes up and down, but to me, that's pretty good. Like for people setting a call from a form online to actually half of them so far in my first like week and a half, them actually make it. I've got some great leads, but what was the main problem I was coming across? I wanted to mention it. Let me just give it a second.
As you think about that, what I want to highlight for everybody listening too is the awesome part about like you go on an appointment and that person's still a year away from now. The good thing is like, okay, great. Now we need to make sure that we build some kind of process around following up with that person. Because to your point, I've experienced the same thing. Someone says, hey, we're like 2-3 years down the road. And then they're calling me in 2 months because they just found an amazing property and it's changed everything for them. And a lot of times people too, they say 2-3 years or they say a year down the road, but now they're thinking about it. So they just imagine it's going to be further down the road. And then again, they see something that they like or something comes up and suddenly those plans move ahead. So what I always do for myself is in my CRM, I set a task to check in with that person 2, 3, 4 weeks from now. And it's a really gentle check-in. It's like, hey, first of all, you should always follow up, obviously, right the day after your meeting, the same day, like, hey, so great meeting you. Awesome. Just to reiterate, your plans are, in the next 12 months, whatever, you just reiterate all that. So you show you're listening. And then in 3 weeks, you're like, hey, was thinking of you. Hope everything's going great. We'll continue to check in with you. And it's just like, just keep the conversation going so that you're still the first person they think of when that comes up because it'll happen quick. So
I meant to, that's what I was going to touch on, maybe what you did to follow up. That was a good point. One was people just click on the ad. They just want the home valuation, right? And I'm trying to get them on the phone just saying, hey, I need some information from you so that I can kind of make that range as tight as possible. And once they kind of start talking about that, and I can go, okay, what kind of floors do you have? When were they installed? Are they like they're like a cherry wood, or are they more like a hand brush blonde oak or something? And they're like, I'm like, see, it's very important because that could be the difference of $50,000 on what it's going to sell for. Do you mind if I come by in person? Once you kind of start talking about that, you can get yourself there in person. But if they're not interested at all, right? The other coach, I forget his name. I'm so sorry. It does a Friday calls from the States. It was really good. He said, if they're not willing to get on the phone, they're not willing to, it's a great way to weed out who's not serious. do I still go by and be super aggressive, knock on the door and say, "Hey, I actually have a physical copy. Like here, I'm Brandon. Here's your comparative market analysis. If you want right now, I can walk through or not or come back. Like, what would you suggest doing? Just send them one, not send them one, be very aggressive.
Yeah, so I personally like, and I don't even know that I would say it's being aggressive. What you're talking about is like aggressive with strategy, but just to make sure that's
Taking
clear,
initiative.
the best way to reiterate it, yeah, is initiative, right? That's a good way to articulate it. I'm a big fan of taking initiative. I don't believe this business hands out any favors. You could do all the business in the world last year, and then this year it's like the ticker starts over. Yes, you're going to get referrals, but like you got to keep building that pipeline. So personally, what I'm doing right now is I've just been getting a couple different assets in place so that I can hit the ground. But I'm going to go drop off a seller's booklet that I have that I've already printed a bunch of these with a geo warehouse report that I'm just, going to have that printed, nice, stapled, put together, and then go over and just say, hey, this is just a really rough outline of some metrics of what's going on here in the neighborhood, different stuff for you to look at. It has an assessed value for tax purposes, which is not a property valuation. Truth is, I don't want to just throw a number willy nilly at you for your house. Like I need to see it. So I totally believe in dropping that off with a business card and then maybe even a little handwritten note that says like please call me so I can actually value your place if they don't answer the door. But the reason that's so valuable is if I could say to all of you guys right now, hey, I have a list of every seller in your area that is going to sell their house in the next year, and it's like a magic button where I could be like, I know I can print this list for you and you can have every person that's going to sell in the next year. It's like, what would we all do? We would all, at least myself, I would sort that list by most expensive houses in reverse order. And then I would go and freaking knock on every one of those doors and find a way to add value, find a way to try and build a relationship. If they already have a real estate agent, you say, that's awesome. No worries at all. If you ever want a second opinion of value, third opinion of value, I would recommend that. This is probably your biggest financial asset, right? Yes. Cool. Would love to come by totally for free and just give you some value. And to people that think they're wasting their time, I think it's like you just don't understand this business yet, which is you gotta have some skin in the game up front in a lot of situations to build rapport and build trust with people. So that is the initiative that I'm taking right now. I'm getting together a list of these people that are already coming through. And on the appointments that I have already had, I've gone over there and been like, super cool. You guys are going to move in 2 years. Let me do a full breakdown of your value today so that you just kind of know what you're working with, just in case something amazing pops up. Then I'm going to set them up on a search with the local real estate board to make sure that if that thing pops up, now I'm sending them emails. Just like add value, build a relationship. And if you do this every single week, it doesn't matter if it's 6 months or a year from now. All of a sudden, if you're flooded with business from everything you're doing today, you just keep that up. That's how you build a big business. So,
Add one more thing that what I was doing with the follow up because I was kind of I never really worked my CRM as I should have, and even the first 2 weeks doing this, I could see how quickly it's an online game. I'm not seeing people in person. I'm not remembering who they are. It's just names and numbers. It's really important to have a CRM. But one thing I was doing to try to like, how do I stay relevant in their mind so that I'm the person I'm not just gonna blanket email them, nonsense. So I was just I was putting myself in an auto email for their community and like anything that lists, I'm emailing them. I have a whole list of all the people from Meskula, emailing, hey, this just listed in your area. I want to tell them about it before even they know. Then when it sells, again, hey, this just sold. This actually helps your value, the kind of thing. I think that's a very easy way, and it adds value, and people love to hear it. They don't need to look for it, but wow, this guy really cares. Every time something's listed and sold, he's calling, and it's effortless for me. Like we all can do it.
yeah, that's exactly right, man. Just continuing to add value because at the end of the day, those things compound over time. And I now, the last few years, have seen how much things just take time to come together. And then all of a sudden you get those calls and you have that business and it comes through. So it really is more than anything in this business about continuing to do those actions, even through the busy seasons, so that you mitigate the risk of you having the cyclical business that so many real estate agents suffer from, right? We do all this work, we get really busy, we stop doing all the things that got us busy because we're busy on fulfillment. And then all of a sudden we're not busy again. And then we do all those actions all over again. So it's like how to consistently just have a routine of building value and trying to make sure we get people in the pipeline. We provide them some kind of update. Ideally, Brandon, more of those things are automatic too, so that you're not relying on having to you yourself. Once you've got 20 people like that and you yourself are trying to cherry pick listings and send them to them, it's not going to scale well. So even just having the ability for you to have an automatic update that you set up through ITSO or MREB
Have
or
them on an auto email, and I just
yeah,
get an update too, just so I can send them a text, just be like, hey, it
perfect.
sends it to them already, and be like, hey, I just saw that came up. But I do like to add that. Obviously, for sure, it'd be really great for all of it automatic. But just that personal touch is all I'm really doing is just texting back
That's
because,
it, man.
yeah,
Even a day of the week where you go and you just review all the searches you've set up. Because I'm at the point now where the amount of people I have on searches, it's actually overwhelming if I go and I was to get emails from all those people. Like, I don't know, it would probably be something like 70 or 80 people that have buyer searches set up right now. And out of all those people, I'm like, man, I'm not getting emails anymore personally to look at their stuff. But what I do is I go in and I pay attention to who today reviewed the searches just through the online board that I have when I set up my search. I can see everybody that logged into the portal today to view houses. And those are the people that I give most of my attention to because I'm like, cool, they're looking, they're paying attention. So I want to make sure that they know I'm checking it out too. So I love that, Brandon. That's great, man. Any objections that you faced when you're dealing with these leads online or having conversations?
yeah, just clicked on it. Wasn't really looking for basically me to come over type thing. Thought they were just going to get an instant valuation, and obviously that's yeah, can't happen. I mean, Zillow tried it, doesn't work. So
Yeah.
especially in my market where I am, it's very country. Can't do it. So what would you suggest? They're being like, oh well, I need to if you want an evaluation, I'm happy to give you one. If I'm going to send you one just based on comparables, homes are like people, so it's on the inside that counts. Like it could be a three, four, $500,000 difference between your house and the neighbors. I'd love to give you an accurate value. Can you tell me more about your home? You go through that. But if they're just stone cold, nothing, like, oh, we just wanted a value, but we don't really want to talk about it. Goodbye.
Yeah, super cool. So number one, first aspect of this, we talked about this a little bit last week or the week before, which is if there's certain people who are like absolutely completely not interested no matter what, yeah, you don't want to waste tons of your time and effort trying to convince people if they're not at least a little bit warm. But
Mhm.
here's a great example of something I use all the time. So when people say, hey, look, hey, I was like totally just quickly trying to get an idea of my house value. Like we're not that serious. I don't want to waste your time. I know realtors, whatever. These are some of the objections that I've had for sure. So the hey, I really just clicked on this because I wanted a quick valuation. I would say to that if it was you, Brandon, I'd say, Brandon, absolutely, man. You probably didn't expect some real estate agent to be picking up the phone, giving you a call right away. But hey, listen, I can give you just a rough value if that's useful. What is it you're looking to get a valuation for?
Mm.
I'm going to
Ask
put it
questions.
back on them to say,
Mm.
what's this for? They're like, oh, just kind of curious. Awesome. Curious. Like, are you thinking about refinancing? Are you looking at what you might be able to go and buy if you're thinking about selling? And then let them share that. The great thing about the Meskula leads is they also come through with the time frame, and you see a lot of those 12 plus months, right? But when they come through, it's like I want information, some intel. And the reason I've had people volunteer a little bit more is because I'm like, hey, I'm actually trying to help you here. I can give you a value of your house, which is what you're asking for, but it's probably going to be a range. And a range isn't super helpful depending on what it is you're trying to do. It might actually mislead you because I might go there and your place might be way better. And I've now undervalued it. And you don't really realize what your buying potential is, your refinancing potential, like whatever the case may be. Right. And that's where what I start with. So I always start with like, awesome. Totally cool. I can provide you just kind of a range. What do you need the range for? Are you thinking about refinancing? Are you thinking about selling, et cetera? And I take it from there.
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you go, like I've always fought with this for my whole career, and sometimes I come ready with what I think the value is going to be if I can kind of see what they maybe sold for 5 years ago and they told me what they've done to the house, and then I can kind of figure it out while I'm there and narrow it down to what the value might likely be. So I have basically a CMA ready to go and tell them myself in person like the actual final number what I think it's worth, or like the short range. Or do you go and see the home, give them kind of an idea and say, I'll get back to you tomorrow and send you the final CMA. I'm just going to crunch some numbers. Like what is your best practice for actually going to the appointment?
Yeah, it's the latter. The reason it's
Yeah.
the latter is that I like to even put a little bug in their ear when I go there, which is like, hey, if anybody ever walks into your house and just like on the spot tells you what they think it's worth, like they're spitballing, and like this is a pretty serious thing to not to take lightly. So it's important
Yeah.
that you have a high degree of accuracy with the person that's coming in to help you sell probably your most valuable asset. So I'll reiterate things like, if someone just steps into this house and tells you what they think it's worth, like they're either dumb or they're lying or whatever, right? So I will intentionally disparage that, like just walk in and tell them, even though you and I both know there is the potential that we could go in and have
Sure.
a pretty good idea of what homes are worth. The other reason I need to do that is because I really do need to fish out from them what they think their house is worth. And the reason
Yeah.
that matters is that we know as real estate agents all day long, we have a fairly, if we're good at what we're doing and paying close attention, we tend to go in with a fairly good idea of what things truly are worth, give or take that like 5% margin depending on the house, right? So the reason I bring that up is because I need to also know what kind of expectations I need to manage, and I need to know how much ammunition I need to bring in to drive home the value of their property. Um, yeah, so I do the second one. I like to do the two step. I like to do the, hey, I'm going to come back and give you the value. And I'll also, something I've been doing lately that's been an amazingly effective practice is, I'll give you an example of a listing appointment that I have tomorrow. I looked at all the comps. I was very confused about it. It's like a horse farm, okay, out in the middle of nowhere. And I ended up speaking with another agent who knew absolutely everything about horse farms. And they were like, hey, you've undervalued the property based on like, you think that's a comp, but it's actually not for all these different reasons. So I've lately made the practice of I'll call the agents that have sold the other units to really make sure I understand exactly what the environment was for that sale. And that way, if they reference an outlier and they're like, hey, what about that property that sold? Then you can be the hero who's like, hey, I actually spoke with that agent. I know the whole detail around that property. It actually sold because of this reason and this reason. And that's why it sold for that price. And then you can kind of curb expectations. So there's a lot to unpack in what I just shared there. But I would say, yes, I always go in and I do the two-step process whenever I can, essentially.
For sure. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Good stuff. So I've taken Brandon and we've had a great one-on-one chat for everybody to listen into. So now switching gears a little bit for the rest of you guys, I would love to hear some other objections. Now, in terms of other agents on the call, see Adam there eating his lunch like a boss, which is great. Adam, buddy, how's it going over there for you when it comes to any objections you're facing when you're out there dealing with leads online, etc.? Nice, putting him on the spot while he's eating. I love it.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yep.
I think pretty much, the main I've only gotten one this week that I like really threw me back, and he was just like, oh, like got through a couple objections, and then he was like, well, I'm just dealing with cancer right now. So like, can I call you back? So I was like, okay, yeah. that one got me. So I just wished him like healing and well wishes, and I told him I'd follow up in a couple days. But
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's huge, man. So when someone hits you with something like that, I think you nailed it. It's like you turn off the sales vibe, and which we never want to obviously come across if we're trying to be salespeople, but you definitely want to turn off anything that sounds like, you're trying to move things forward. And I think you handled that perfectly, which is just, hey man, wishing you the best, take your time, recover. I'll check in on you in a couple days. By the way, if there's anything you need, just let me know. Like, happy to help or be a resource or whatever it is you need. Because yeah, that's heavy, man. That's a wild objection, Adam. I wouldn't even call that objection. It's just a wild reality somebody's facing over there.
I
yeah,
had that too this week. Same thing.
oh wow.
Exact same. Yeah, exact
They
same.
must have had the same lead, man. Just kidding.
Just I did learn though, for anyone else that's on the call, because I have to now do this when that objection comes through, I have to be more aggressive in turning Ashley's follow-up game off. So because that came through the following day, and he was like, I really need you to lighten up. So now I had to pull back Ashley. So in case anyone ever gets that objection again, that would be the only thing I feel like I could have done better. And that's my own fault for not thinking about that.
I love the ownership there, Adam. What I would say in those situations, one of the most valuable lessons I have learned in the last probably 2 years now, like it's totally transformed moments like this where there's a blunder of some kind. I would call it a blunder for sure. Someone tells you something deeply personal, and then there's some message that has no sensitivity to the situation at all. What I've learned is this concept of the angry boat. Maybe a bunch of you guys have heard of this already. It's something that Alex Hormozy talks about in a video, and it's phenomenal. So the angry boat philosophy is this: this lady walks into a store. She had just bought this very expensive jacket, and she was back the next day because a button had fallen off, and she is livid. She's freaking out, super upset, and she goes up to the guy at the counter, Alex, and says, like, this is ridiculous. She's really mad, right? So as she's yelling at him, essentially, Alex looks to the right, and the store owner is walking through the door, and he's out of sight of the customer, and he kind of like gives a quick like eye roll, like I have to deal with this every day. And as soon as he's in sight of the client, he turns it on, and he is now angry on behalf of the client. He walks up and says, like, "Ma'am, what's the problem?" She's, yelling at him. "I just bought this jacket. This is ridiculous." He gets more upset than her on her behalf and says, "This is absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to get to the bottom of this right away." And he turns up his level of frustration to a 10. And then what happens is she kind of backs off a little bit. She's like, "Oh, no, like it's okay. Like he's like, no, I'm going to take this in the back right now. We're going to find out who sold this to you, what the reason is for this, and we're going to get to the bottom of this immediately, and we're going to have this fixed for you. So thank you so much for your patience, but this is completely unacceptable," etc. And then he goes in the back, has it fixed, comes back out, gives it to her, and everything's all good. The reason this has been so profound is I now use this religiously. I use it nonstop all the time. So take a moment like that, Adam, where that interaction happened with you. What I would do is once he said, "Hey, like you guys need to lighten off," and he's messaging Ashley or you or whatever, I would drop him a quick message and say, "Hey, I am beyond sorry. It's completely unacceptable that my team member reached out like that." And I would just do a bit of good cop, bad cop. Like I'd throw some shade at Ashley. She's not going to care. She's just doing her job over there, sending messages. Give her a heads up and say, "Hey, you're going to look like the bad guy for a second, but like whatever. It's all good." And "Hey, I'm so incredibly sorry that message. We hadn't communicated that. And ultimately my fault, but I just want to let you know that's completely not okay." And they're going to be like, "Oh man, like it's all good. It's not a big deal." Like, but then you're the guy that's leaning forward, being incredibly considerate about the situation. So, yeah, that's what I do, man.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Not that you were asking me what to do in that situation, but it's a good way to handle it, man. It's awesome, buddy. Good stuff. We got a bunch more people hopping on here too. So today what we've been chatting through is just objections. And I know last week, one of the things that Mike actually is on the call today, Mike Piscopo, I think that's how you say it. He brought up the point of like, hey, is the goal to convert everybody and deal with every objection so that it converts into an actual lead? And the answer is no. Some people just aren't ready to sell, truly don't want to sell, are incredibly rude, whatever the case may be. And it's like, we're not looking to try and convert absolutely everybody. What we are looking to do is the people that are just hesitant because you're an unknown person contacting them, they don't have any trust, any rapport built with you. It's to get over those initial hurdles of the retailer who says, "Hey, like, is there anything I can help you with today?" And our immediate response is like, "I'm just shopping. No, thanks." We're trying to get past those objections by having better conversations. So just to pick someone else out of the crowd today, Jeffrey, see you on the call. I don't think we've met before, so it's great to have you on here, Jeff. Any objections
Great. Thank
you've
you.
been getting or dealing with when it comes to phone calls, conversations you're having with clients lately?
The biggest thing that I need and hope to overcome is non-responsiveness,
Mm,
and or just saying to Ashley, no thanks, I changed my mind, I'm not interested, whatever. I call, they don't answer. That's the biggest thing I would like to overcome.
good. So let's start with this. What is the current process you have when you see a lead come through? And let's just say it's just a person that you've got their information, but they didn't book a call with you. So you've just got the basic leads that's come through. What's your process there, Jeff?
Yeah, so I've never had anybody book a call with me through Ashley. I did, follow up, and this one person, they finally told me what a good day to talk to them was, and so we made an appointment to talk that day. 2 days later, I went to their house and listed it. So, that was definitely a success. Even though it
So
needs a
casual, such a casual level of success there. That's great.
well, it needs a lot of work. I mean, the
Sure.
exact same property went for 310 the day before. It just got added to the CRM before I checked that on my way over there. But their property was in such bad shape that, they agreed 240 was like a fair price. And there was even another property that was 225 in about the same condition, but everything else was between 250 and 300.
Yep.
And I didn't
So
want to go down that low. And in the comments for the 225 property, it said
really,
motivated.
really quick, Jeff, just to jump in here for 1 second, I want to steer you back to your point, which is awesome, which is how do you get non-responsive people, right? I know we're talking about the detail of this listing,
Right.
but with non-responsive people, here's the answer that I'm looking for that I'll give you how I do it, and then you can tell me if this is similar, different to how you approach it. So number one, every lead gets a text message from me, a phone call first. So I call them first. If they don't answer, I leave a voicemail personally, and I double dial every contact. So call, they don't answer, I call a second time right away. The reason is lots of people just ignore the first phone call. They don't really know what's going on. Just go ahead and Google later, double dialing what the likelihood is that you're going to get a phone pickup. So if I could tell you there's something you could do right away to increase your odds by like 50, 60%, it's double dialing. So double dial everybody, leave a voicemail, I leave a text message, and I leave an email right away for every contact, because in my CRM, if I leave an email and they open it, I can see if they opened it. That will indicate to me that it's likely a good email address and that they really are paying attention. What you'll laugh at is you'll double dial someone, they won't answer, you'll leave a voicemail, you leave a text message, you'll leave an email, and you'll see them open that email within like 2 or 3 minutes. So people are paying attention, they know what's going on. The reason I'm asking you, Jeff, is the way to increase your engagement rate is to make sure that up front you're being more intentional with those immediate responses to show that you're professional and you're on it. The fear that I've definitely had in the past is I'm bothering people, and then it just takes a couple people to later down the road thank you for like being persistent, doing your job, getting it done, for you to be like, I need to make sure I do this with everybody. So everybody gets a phone call, text, email, and then the same day, later in the day, you could follow up with a call just to see if you can get a hold of them if you didn't, or the next day, repeat the process. And the reason that's important in those first 24 hours is those people are probably clicking on lots of different stuff. The more time you let elapse, the lower the likelihood that they're going to remember something they clicked on Facebook that led you to reach out to them. So,
And,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
and after you leave the first voicemail the first day, then you follow up in the afternoon, you don't get them. Do you leave a second voicemail? You follow up the next day, you don't get them. Do you leave another voicemail?
Don't leave any further voicemails. I leave a voicemail the first time. And then
Okay.
after that, I just make phone calls because I'm not trying to fill up their inbox. I'm just trying to put a friendly voice to the name so that people go, oh, this person sounds like a courteous professional who I would be comfortable to talk to. That's it. So I'm trying to make sure I put a voice to the name, and I'm trying to get a hold of them. And then I have my follow-up boss set up with smart lists so that every day until I change them out of being a lead is somebody that I don't know what their details are and why they're in my database. I need to change that person out of being a lead as fast as possible. So they go into smart lists called not contacted yet. And those are the first list they land in. And then they land in a daily list for 2 weeks. And the goal there is like, you got to get a hold of them as quickly as possible and change the lead into contact, a sphere. Are they hot, warm, cold, etc. So that's the goal there, Jeff. So I follow up with them daily at that point. And the other thing I'll do is if I have their address, this is what I was talking about with Brandon at the very beginning of the call. I'm right now getting together geo warehouse reports, and I'm going to go to each person's place and just drop off a geo warehouse report with a seller booklet with a business card. Because at the end of the day, if I could tell you, which is what I started this call with, if I could have a list of everybody that's going to sell in your neighborhood and you knew that they were going to sell sometime in the next year, and you magically had that list before everybody else, I think all of us would go door knock those houses and be like, how do I proactively try and get ahead? So my recommendation there, Jeff, is that yeah, be proactive with the phone calls, emails, and text messages, because you also don't know how certain people like to communicate. They might prefer text message, other people email, other people phone call, and you just want to get them on the call and move them forward, Jeff.
Now,
Brandon, you had a question there.
Just your follow-up, boss. So everyone goes into like not like lead not contacted yet. Then once you're qualifying them, you speak with them, hot, medium, cold. For hot, you're obviously working with them, finding a property for them, or valuing their property, getting their house ready to go. Medium and cold, like what would your follow-up be? What like how do you characterize those, and what is your plan?
Yeah, so hot, medium, and cold are actually all people that haven't converted into a client yet, or I would put them under active. And once they're an active client, that's different. Now I've set up a deal for them in the deal pipeline within Follow Up Boss. And everybody that goes into deals has a property value and oftentimes commissions left blank because I'm not sure what it is yet. If it's buying, I might know the percentage roughly for my area. So the point is, hot is actually a 0 to 3 months time frame. Like now, they're gonna do something now because 3 months from now is now, right? So if they're like 0 to 3 months, I put them in hot. If they're 3 to 6, they're or 3 to 12, they're in warm, and then 12 plus is cold. And that is how I categorize them. So that lady you were on the appointment with the other day, if she said within the next 12 months, I would put her in the warm bucket because that could change anytime. And you want to be ready for that. And you don't want to treat her like she's a cold person that's like more than a year down the road and you miss those interactions. And then those smart lists are categorized such that I want to speak with those people every X number of days to get them on the phone.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Awesome. And that's a great question too. And then Jeff, sorry, just to jump back in on you there for a second. Does that make sense? Like, are you currently utilizing that practice, or do you think what we talked about today would help you
Yeah.
higher
So that
conclusion?
it makes a lot of sense. The two questions are, if Ashley is doing the texting, am I texting on top of Ashley?
Awesome question. So what I do, number one, is that I've seen Ashley's messages there. I want to jump in as quickly as possible myself to introduce myself and start the conversation. And you could always just drop Ashley a note, like I've got it from here, or I'm in conversation now. But each day the text is because you're trying to get a hold of them on a call now. So the intention's a little bit different for you to say like, hey, trying to get a hold of you, want to finish this report for you. I've got a valuation. When's the best time to come by, check out the house, drop off the valuation, etc. You just want to be in conversation with people. So I would let Ashley know in those situations, like, hey, I'm now taking over this person, or texting them.
Okay, and then have the auto text stop
Yes.
if I'm taking control. Okay, and then the other two questions. Geo warehouse. I mean, what do you mean by that? What is that?
Yeah. So I'm guessing, are you based in Ontario, Jeff? Probably not, right? Ontario,
Oh,
Canada.
Florida.
So in Ontario, Canada, we have this thing called Geo Warehouse, which is a really simple property breakdown. I can't remember what it's called there in Florida, where it essentially gives you the what did this person buy their house for? What is the assessed value from a tax perspective of their property, which is not a valuation. Like example, a $1.7 million house here in Ontario, Canada might show an assessed value of like $700,000. So there's going to be a massive discrepancy, but it'll say 2016 assessed value. And that's just from a tax perspective. So it has those values in there. Then it has heat maps showing the community that they live in and the surrounding communities, and it's showing things like the turnover rate, what the list sale price ratio is. Like it's got a couple different little things. Shows like communities, the local schools in the communities, just a couple little things that looks like you've put together this big giant report when really you've just clicked print on Geo Warehouse, clicked client report, and balanced out this report. The reason I provide that is because it shows like, hey, look, here's a bunch of details about your area. We know everything about your area. We know everything that's going on. At the end of the day, I just need to see your house to be able to put a value on this house for you. But in the meantime, like here's something that shows expertise and feels like a little tiny deliverable of putting something together. So that's what Geo Warehouse does. I'm not sure in Florida. Do you have something similar there, Jeff, to that?
Well, the first thing you mentioned would be the tax records.
Yep.
That'll show what they paid for it, who bought it before them, things like that, what the tax value is, which doesn't necessarily, like you said, have to coincide with the real value.
Yeah.
So tax records would be, I guess, part of that geo warehouse. The heat map, I'm not really sure about that. And then you mentioned activity in the community and schools. So I do have a way to get that. I have a website that can do all that for me.
Yeah, this
Uh,
is what your warehouse would look like. So just to give you an idea here, click on a random property, right? When you click into that property, it'll show what the last purchase price was. So this one was clearly an exchange between family members, right, for $2. And then it's got the legal description. If I scroll down, it's got, the current assessed value of the property. Okay. Shows like the frontage, the depth of the property, the zoning, and it's just a nice little printout. So if I click print on this and I click client report and I generate this, it's going to generate a nice little report with my face at the top of it. So have a tool like this, something that you're using to really quickly be able to bounce out some value. And that way, at the very least, if you're trying to get a valuation done for them, you can show something that's essentially a little bit of homework that you've done to just know, hey, I know you bought the property for this, or I know it traded hands. So this is what the report looks like, right? Shows the property boundaries. Already, that's going to be cool for certain sellers to see. Like, oh yeah, there's my property, there's the boundaries. That's great. I didn't realize what, how much of an acre I had, or I didn't realize, the measurements of my property. So that's really helpful for them to have. It's got the phased in values from a tax perspective. And then it's got the zoning. It's got all these little details that'll be helpful for them to just take a peek at and be like, cool, this person's got some stuff on my property. And then it's got the most recent sales history as well. So this property has no sales history. It's stayed within the family from when it was built. But now you know that. Now you know, like, hey, you guys are original owners. That's super cool. You built the house. Then underneath, it's got some demographics on the local area. All right. And then it's got households showing like household income. And then underneath that, it's got some socioeconomic stuff. And then it's got these right here, which is comparable sales. So if there was comparable sales, it would show them. Right now, there's nothing. And then it shows this area heat map. So like, hey, here's the average price point within that area. Here's the growth rate in the area the last 5 years, the market turnover. And if you're providing a seller with all this, it looks like you've done all this homework for them, which is awesome because like you're just providing them some quick resources. A lot of real estate agents never even bounce this stuff out for their clients. So it's good for you to just be able to go, hey, look, like when you're comparing that neighborhood, check it out. That neighborhood's actually growing like crazy right now. It's growing at 17%. Like there's a ton of growth happening there. Or we're in a neighborhood that's declining compared to that other neighborhood, or there's like not a lot of growth rate. Whatever the case may be, it just allows you to have some good talking points, right?
yeah, that's a great resource. I'd like to figure out how to get something like that in my area. Absolutely. And when you say growth, what does that mean? Does that mean that new properties are going up, or more properties are coming for sale, or prices are going up?
Yeah, growth rate in that context, because there's definitely not more houses being put up. It's essentially about the growth of the value. So it says the growth rate shows the average sale price of properties within the property's block compared to the surrounding blocks. So it is about the average sale price.
Okay. And then the other thing, and I did actually one time hire a company that sent me some sellers books, and I sent a bunch of them out to random people that I forget what program it was in the MLS figured out who was most likely to sell. And expensive homes that were most likely to sell, and I sent them out to sellers books. I didn't want to make a super huge investment in it because I didn't know if I was just investing in another thing that wasn't going to do anything. So I bought a certain amount, sent them out, nothing happened, and that was the end of that. But I would ask you if you have a
Yeah.
resource for the seller's book.
Yeah, you know what? I just use a local printer for that. I've put together a booklet on Canva that I've had now for a little while. So at the end of the day, I would say there's so many amazing like Etsy templates or different templates you can go buy online to put together a booklet. And the main thing you want to do in your booklet that I like to do, I wish I had one with me right here, but I don't, is essentially you just want to showcase your marketing, what you're doing that's innovative, that will get people's attention from a marketing perspective, because that's what sellers want to see. If you can put in your track record and your history and show a bunch of the properties you've sold, that's a good thing too. And you want to steer everybody back to, from my perspective, back to my website where I show all the exclusive listings that I have, what's active, what's sold, and just helps me kind of further that credibility. So that's what the booklet is for me. I highlight, hey, we take care of staging, we take care of the cleaning, we take care of all the aspects of marketing the property, from Facebook marketing to YouTube to like, here's how we're using Instagram, even weird things like TikTok. And yes, we've actually sold a couple houses through TikTok, which is bizarre and wild. Like just highlighting what you're doing so that ideally when you walk in to do a listing presentation, they're already well aware what you offer. And then you get to have like a more engaging conversation. So yeah, great questions there, Jeff. I think that's awesome. And we got a couple other questions that have come through here, which are great. So, and I always miss to check the chat. So don't hesitate if I ever miss stuff to throw your hand up, ask a question. I'm going to get to you in just a second there, Gotham. I really quickly want to answer Danielle's question here. So is she still on the call, Emmanuel, or was that just a question? Yep, she is. Nice. Okay. Danielle, I'd love if you want to throw your video on your mic, I'd love to actually chat with you about your question. But you mentioned you're going to be dropping off 2 home evaluation reports to long-term leads that are thinking about selling next year. What should you do before you leave their house to make sure that you're going to follow up and stay relevant? We've talked about some of these things today, which is awesome. Anything you'd want to add to that question, Daniela?
No, it's pretty much just that. I had two people booked a call, and then when they booked a call, I just called them. I'm like, hey, I'll be in your neighborhood. I'll just drop this report to you. I'll meet with you. And then she's like, no, I wasn't looking for that. I'm not selling. I'm like, that's great. We just meet in person. I'll show you this report. I'm happy that you signed up, and I just didn't even give them a chance to say no. So I'm basically going there without them wanting to sell or anything. So it's tomorrow, and I have the other one on Friday. So I was just trying to think, okay, they're not selling, they're just wanting to open the door to get the reports, and then what? Because they are not planning to sell from what they said. So I was just thinking, build reports, getting to know them. But I wouldn't know how to follow up after that, since they are not in the intention of listing their home at all. Because we always listen to the calls where like, okay, yeah, come, I might sell. But I've never heard of someone just going without these people having the actual intention of selling.
Awesome question. Okay, let me give you an example. That's exactly what I did with a guy. I think I mentioned this on the call last week or the week before. And his name right now is slipping my mind because I spoke with him one time. And he essentially said, hey, Jake, listen, man, we love where we live. We just bought this house like last year. No plans on selling. We're going to be here a while. And on the phone with him, this is exactly what I said. I said, oh, hey, man, that's awesome. I actually live around the corner. You sound like a great guy. We need great neighbors here. So I'm glad you're not moving. And he laughed because that's pretty funny to say, right? I'm like, hey, man, I'm one of your neighbors. Really glad we're going to have good people in the neighborhood, man. Glad you're not moving. He's like, awesome. Yeah, we love it here. No plans on moving. I said, amazing, man. Well, I said, great. Then while I've got you, and I'll just say John, while I've got you, John, why don't I just quickly give you a rough idea, man, of what your value is on your place? And he's like, that would be awesome. I said, great, man. Let me just, and on the spot in front of him, I just opened up some of the comps and I was just spitballing with him because now I'm like, cool, he has no plans on selling. I definitely am not going to try and change this guy's mind. So here's what I'm trying to do at that point. I know that John has neighbors around him. He has friends and family. He has different people that are going to sell this year. And my goal is that now that he's interacting with me, Jake Nicole, I want the name Jake Nicole to get stuck in his head. And I want that interaction to be pleasant and not to be a sales exchange. If he says, hey, man, I'm not selling and I want a valuation, then I'm like, peace out, see you never. It doesn't leave a good taste in people's mouth, right? You're damaging your reputation now. So I promise something, which is I'm going to give you a value on your house. He still wants it, even though he's not going to sell. And then we start having a conversation. And I'm like, by the way, man, as I'm pulling up the comps here, are you doing some refinancing? Like, what do you need this valuation for? right? This is what Brandon and I talked about earlier, is getting to the bottom of the motivation to even get the valuation. He's like, you know what? I'm really just curious. And I said, that's great, man. Like, when you bought this place last year, you guys probably going to be here for what, the next 10 years then? Like, is it a long-term plan? And now, while I'm giving him the value, because I'm about to deliver a breakdown of here's the other sales, I'm talking with him about his plans. And then he's like, actually, we bought here because my daughter is going to school for McMaster. And I was like, that's amazing, man. My wife went to McMaster back in the day. Like, what's she studying at McMaster? And now I'm building rapport, having a conversation. By the end of that call, which was probably 15 minutes long, that guy was like, hey, man, if I know anybody who's thinking about selling, like, I'm definitely going to give them your information. This was awesome. And then I was like, great, man. Do you mind if I stay in touch with you? Like, would be awesome to stay in touch. Again, I'm just around the corner, so it's good to know more of the neighborhood. We do different community events. It would be awesome to stay in touch with you. He's like, man, that'd be great. So now I've got permission to, he's going to get my newsletters once a month, right? If I really wanted to, I could have said, hey, man, do you want me to keep you on a neighborhood report and send him emails? But I knew that he didn't want that based on my conversation. So the point here is like, yes, find ways to move people forward, add value. Just be mindful that if they're like, hey, we really don't want you to come by our house, whatever, just be mindful not to step on people's boundaries too much, right? Like, the last thing you want to do is they're like, do not come by my house, and you still show up and knock on their door. At that point, Daniela, I would just send them an email and be like, here's an email. Here's the report that I put together. Here's a rough idea of value. Just wanted to make sure I delivered this to you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to be a resource. If you want a more accurate valuation, let me know and I need to stop by, and I'd be happy to do so as well. So you just want to make good on your promises in this business so that your do say ratio is 100%. And then make sure that you're also being sensitive to people who are like, do not come by my house. So is that helpful, Daniela?
Yeah, I wanted just to specify. Yeah, no, I wanted to specify that when people say I don't want, I also tell them I don't want to go in people's homes that don't want me. It's dangerous for me too. But I just want to specify that it wasn't that she said I don't want you in my house. She said I was not expecting that. I didn't think that it was needed, And then she said okay, and then booked in person. I just want to say that. Obviously, like, if people don't want me in their house, I'm not gonna show up. Just wanted to clarify.
That's awesome. I was giving the extreme example of where you want to draw the line, but if you can get that permission and they're worried, a lot of people are just worried they're inconveniencing you because they're like, hey, I'm not that serious. Don't want to mislead you. Don't want you to come by and do all this work only to realize I'm not really interested in selling. And in those situations, it's still just about trying to move forward with some value to show people like, hey, I'm also here to work and get stuff done for you and contribute. So love that, Daniela. I think that's a great strategy. Go with, like, that's when you want to go with the seller booklet, some different marketing materials. So you can be like, hey, I know you said you weren't planning on selling. Just at any point, if you know someone who's thinking about selling or you have any questions, here's a little bit about our process and what we do. And that'll be great to do. Mike, you had a question there, brother.
I did, yeah. So I have a question. So once you get them on the phone and you're able to talk to them, they don't want to meet you in person as of yet because it's too early in the process, or they're just apprehensive to meet with you at this point. You'll give them a very vague or wide range as to what their property could be worth. Unfortunately, we're not using numbers like Jeff at 240,000. I wish we were. What's your process after that?
So someone comes and they say, hey, I'm too early on in the process. That's the objection, essentially.
Basically, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate you giving me the numbers. Yeah, I'll be in touch with you when we're ready. And, it sounds like they're within the 0 to 6 month range. So it's soon. So I'm just trying to figure out what the next step to keep in touch, or how to promote, or how to keep in their face.
Love it. Now, when you gave them that valuation, what was the process up to that point?
So I found out all the information about their home. I found out how long they've been there. I found out what their motivation is to sell. A lot of them have motivation. One is divorcing. One is downsizing due to mortgage size. One just wants to change areas that they're in. So there is motivation for them to change, to move. It's just getting in that door that I'm having a bit of an issue with.
Super cool. So here's what I'd start with, Mike, is number one, are you doing these valuations exclusively over the phone or also in person?
I'm trying to get in the door. They won't let me in the door yet, so it's over the phone. And like I said, it's a very broad, very wide range of a number that I'm offering them. So, I'll give them a range anywhere between $1 million to $1.2 million, for example, and let them know that once I can see the property, I can definitely narrow down that range to a very specific number to give them a better indication as to what their house is worth. It could be worth well over 1.2 million. I don't know sight unseen. It's very hard to
Perfect.
determine.
Good. So here's what I did yesterday for someone that was like, the objection was, hey, we've got like lots of people that we're working with. Don't really want to have you buy just yet because they don't know me, right? So the response was awesome. Hey, I'll tell you what. No worries. The guy's name was Ugo. I said, Ugo, no worries at all, man. Why don't we do this? I said, I'm literally around the corner from you. I'm at, and then I always say my address so that I try and build some rapport. So I'm at 123 Fake Street. I'm literally just around the corner in this Mohawk Meadows area. And then he's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I kind of know the area. I said, listen, man, I'm actually running by through your neighborhood a little bit later today. Why don't I just drop off this report that I've got for you so you've at least got some information from me? And it's like, that's a great way. Then like, and he right away was like, yeah, that sounds great. No problem at all. Very resistant to having me over to his house. Ultra resistant to like, yeah, no problem. If you want to drop something off, that's great. That at least allows me a foot in the door to have a conversation. And then at that point, the conversation would be, hey, we'll get in touch with you when we're thinking about moving or whatever. And then I would probably say to someone, if they had like a 6-month time frame, you knew their whole motivation, everything, I'd say, John, great, man. That sounds perfect. Sounds like you're going to get in touch with me when things make sense. Just a quick question for you. Based on kind of the time frame that you got, it would mean you'd be looking to, if you want to be out of your house in 6 months. Is that the time frame, John? You want to be out of your house in 6 months? And John goes yes or no. And if he says yes, I'd be like, so just to make sure I understand, if you want to be out of your house in 6 months, it means that you essentially need to be on the market and sold in about the next 3 months. Does that make sense? And they're like, yes, no. And the reason I would ask these questions is to get to the bottom of like, hey, like that's actually like a really soon time frame. Like 6 months is way sooner than you realize. So, what I'd be happy to do, John, is just like come by and point you at least in the right direction. Like, do you have someone in mind that you're already thinking about working with? And I'm going to start to ask a couple of these questions that are like, they say yes. I go, hey, that's perfect, man. Well, let me just come be a second opinion for you so that you and that agent can kind of take whatever plan and like run with it. Right. And I've used this a couple times because then it's very disarming. And the truth is, I expect that people would be like wall up, right? They don't know you. You're just a phone, someone calling them. That's why I'm going to say my name. I like to say my wife's name when I'm on the phone with them, when it makes sense to introduce that. And explain like, oh, my wife, Helen, and I, we actually live over at 123 Fake Street. We're like a 5-minute drive just around the corner from you. And we love it here in the neighborhood. And I want to try to build some rapport and show them like, hey, I'm a person too. I'm not some salesperson calling you from 1,500 miles away from my desk, right? I think that's super important.
Okay. And when you do go drop off, I guess you're dropping off the seller's package, the geo report, like you mentioned, which I use all the time, and a business card.
Exactly right, man. Yep, right. Exactly right.
Thanks,
and Mike, you're in Vaughan, is that right?
I am, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, man, like for you, you're in an area where it's like you just go deliver that value to those people and then drop me a message. Let me know how that goes, man. I'd love to hear other responses for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, buddy. Gotham, thanks for your patience there.
Hey, no worries. Quick question for you. So when you go door knocking and things like that, what do you usually bring with you? I know you mentioned the booklet, and when you say booklet, do you like mean like 100-page kind of book, or is it more of like a pamphlet kind of thing? And aside from that, like what else do you bring with you?
Yeah, so if I'm if I'm just going door knocking, like separately, which is I'm just gonna go knock a bunch of doors, I just bring door hangers with me because it's too cumbersome to carry like a bunch of booklets. And I don't want to just throw out the booklets kind of willy-nilly at people so they can just trash them. So I bring door hangers so that if someone doesn't answer, I can leave the door hanger. And I've got usually a stack of business cards just on me so that I can kind of give them a door hanger or a business card. If I'm door knocking someone like what we're talking about, where it's a seller lead, in those situations, I've got a geo warehouse report. I've got a seller booklet. The seller booklet is 20 pages, so it's not very big. And those 20 pages are, hey, here's like a handwritten letter from me explaining what it is that we do and why our process matters. By handwritten, I mean like it's typed out with my signature at the bottom. And then you open it up and it's got like, here's our marketing efforts. Here's the staging and cleaning process. At the very back, it's got like a seller's checklist for them to go through, which is like, hey, clean out all of this, touch up this, fix that. Like just a checklist of like, here's the basic stuff that you can do to start getting your house ready. It's got a bunch of testimonials in there and all that kind of essential stuff. Lots of QR codes to point them back to the website.
Okay, cool. So, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
very helpful. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, Jeff. Mike, I think are you scrolling through a seller's booklet that you have right there? Is that what you're holding on to?
Actually, you know what I'm holding on to is the Ferris team. This is one of the packages they leave at a home. It's actually it's a home that's currently for sale, and then in here at the back, they will have reasons to choose them. So you know why choose our team, what we do, and all that good stuff that they package in here. So I was looking to have something like this also made.
Now, for context for everybody listening, the Ferris team, I think they do like over $1 billion a year in sales. They're massive,
No,
huge.
they do 1,000 ends a year.
Yeah,
They're
crazy.
insane.
Crazy. So yeah, massive, massive guys, and they crush the business that they do. I've done a few deals already with other Ferris agents, and it's like, yeah, they have a great process. So,
So I was
awesome
just
stuff.
trying to steal some ideas from it, to be honest.
Say it again, Mike.
I was just trying to steal some ideas from their booklet.
What's the famous Steve Jobs saying? It's like great art, or like good art is created, great art is stolen. So yeah, man, just like borrow some ideas. Good stuff, guys.
Steal from the best.
That's it, man. Well, appreciate everybody's time today. That hour absolutely flew by. As always, if you guys have anything you want to chat through, let us know. I'd be happy to cover different subjects. I've been enjoying talking through objections because it's just such a big part of what we do. Whether we're talking with our own clients or other agents, there's just so many different objections that we need to learn to handle. So it's a great talking point. Thanks for all the kind words, as always, all the kind questions. And if you guys want to drop me a follow online on Instagram, I'll do the exact same thing. Just at Jake Nicole on Instagram, and I'll drop you a follow back. Thanks for all the time, guys. Appreciate it.